This lecture is on taste anatomy. So taste, then, is a chemical sense. The other chemical sense is smell. So just for a little bit of basic anatomy here, taste sensation is done mostly by the tongue. However, there are also cells that can detect taste in the back of the throat, epiglottis, the nasal cavity, and even the upper part of the esophagus. So mostly in the tongue, but a few other places as well. And then infants and young children, that's a C, not an E, infants and young children also have sensory cells for taste, that is, on their hard palate in the middle. I'm going to emphasize middle here, in the middle of their tongue, as well as in the mucous membranes of their lips and cheeks. So you have many more taste sensory cells in infants and young children than you do in adults. So now I'm going to talk about our usual anatomical part for taste, called the taste bud. So I'm going to be drawing you a picture as well as telling you about it. So here we go. I'm drawing you a bunch of cells here that are described as sensory cells. First, I'm going to draw the outer portion here. The anatomical feature that senses taste is known as a taste bud, and it really does look something like a bud, like a flower bud, like a tulip maybe or something. So let's just put this in here like this. And these are all going to have nucleuses because they're cells, of course. So here we have nucleuses. And here we have a bunch of hair-like extensions up here. And the whole thing slopes a little bit. So I'm going to actually make this a little bit more of a depression here. So it kind of goes more like this. So there's this little area in here known as a taste pore. So here we have the taste pore, like that. Now some of the cells here I'm just going to mark off as being slightly different. This is a supporting cell. And down here, this is what is called a basal cell. I'm not very interested in them, but just so that you understand that a few other cells exist in your taste buds. But the vast majority of the cells in your taste buds, like this one, and this one, and this one, and this one, and this one, these now are all your sensory cells. These are the really important ones here. And then around the outside of the taste pore, out here, I'm just going to kind of indicate that there will be other cells of the tongue here, just so you know. So here we just have other tongue cells. So these then would be from the mucus. Let me make that a little bit clearer for you. So surrounding this then is the mucous membrane of the tongue. That is simply what surrounds this lovely structure here with its sensory cells, and the sensory cells are then going to have nerve fibers coming out of them. The nerve fibers, of course, will then take that sensory information eventually off to the brain. So here we have then all these nerve fibers. I won't draw lines to all of them, but here we have nerve fibers, and this whole structure here, this lovely little flower-like object here, is called a taste bud. So the taste bud is this little object here with this depression called the taste pore. These little bitty structures in here. These little objects here that you see here, which are the taste hairs, those are the ones that actually interact with the chemicals that create taste, like sweet, sour, and so on. Then we have the sensory cells that form this lovely bud. And then we have the nerve fibers that take that information about taste off to the brain. So there's your basic taste bud. So, talking about tongue areas, all tastes can be perceived by all areas of the tongue. However, the sides are more sensitive than the middle. Of the tongue. And the back of the tongue, that's a the there, the back of the tongue is more sensitive to bitter tastes. So as I said, these are the tongue areas here. Now, as to the taste bud that I drew you over there, let's take a look at what that looks like and what's going on there. So, your taste buds then have numerous, like between 10 to 50 sensory cells, these things here, that are in turn connected to many different nerve fibers. So we have the sensory cells that are then connected to the nerve fibers. And the sensory cells, as I have drawn here then, form a capsule that is shaped like a flower bud. So there we have it. It looks a little bit like a tulip. And at the tip of the capsule, there is a pore. There's the pore. That works as a fluid filled funnel. So I'm just going to erase this top bit here to continue what I was just saying. So we're now carrying on up here. So we have, as I said, the fluid in the mouth coming down into these taste pores here. And then this funnel then contains thin finger-shaped sensory cell extensions that are called taste hairs. So here we have the taste pore. Here we have the little bitty taste hairs. Here we have the sensory cells underneath. Here we have the nerve fibers. And here's what's going on with the taste hairs. This is kind of where taste comes from now. So there are proteins. Then on the surface that bind chemicals. And it is this binding of chemicals then to the cell for tasting. So that completes the process. You have various different, remember, tastes are basically chemicals. Sweet obviously has to do with sugars, which are chemicals, for instance. So you have these different chemicals that then get funneled into the taste pore. The proteins bind with them. And then that interaction then gets translated as different kinds of tastes. And that information then winds up being taken off to the brain. And that then is the anatomy of your taste for the end of this lecture.